Willow Rodriguez had never imagined that falling in love with a billionaire would be the easy part, but standing in the pristine bathroom of their penthouse apartment staring at yet another negative pregnancy test, she understood that the real challenge was only beginning. The test clattered into the wastebasket, joining 3 others from the past week alone, and she pressed her palms against the cool marble countertop, willing herself not to cry before she had to face Preston McKinley in the next room. They had been married for 8 months now, together for nearly 2 years, and every single day still felt like a dream she might wake up from. Preston was everything she had never expected to find in Manhattan. She had been working as a marine biologist at the New York Aquarium in Brooklyn. When they first met during a corporate event his company had sponsored, he had wandered away from the cocktail reception to watch the beluga whales, and she had been giving an after-hours presentation to the sponsors about the conservation programs they funded. She remembered how his dark eyes had fixed on her with genuine interest as she explained the rehabilitation process for injured sea turtles, how he had stayed behind after everyone else left to ask more questions, how his expensive suit had seemed completely out of place among the fish tanks, but somehow right when he smiled at her. He had asked her to dinner that night, and she had said yes without thinking twice, drawn to the warmth in his expression and the way he listened like every word she spoke mattered. Preston had told her on their 3rd date that he ran an international shipping and logistics company, something about freight and supply chains that she barely understood. It was not until their 6th date when a business magazine fell out of his briefcase with his face on the cover that she realized Preston McKinley was not just successful, he was a billionaire. The revelation had nearly sent her running, convinced that someone like him could never seriously want someone like her, a woman who spent her days in rubber boots and smelled like salt water. But Preston had proven her wrong in every possible way. He had pursued her with unwavering determination, showing up at the aquarium with coffee during her early morning shifts, attending her presentations to school groups, even volunteering to help clean the tanks when they were short-staffed. He had made her feel like she was the most important person in his world, and somewhere along the way, he had become the most important person in hers. They had married in a small ceremony in the Hamptons with just close friends and family. Preston had wanted something huge and elaborate, but he had agreed to her preference for intimacy without hesitation. That was who he was, someone who valued her happiness above everything else, who made space for her dreams even as he built his empire. And now, they were trying to start a family. It had been Preston's idea initially. They had been lying in bed one Sunday morning, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows of their penthouse, and he had rolled over to look at her with that expression he got when something important was on his mind. "I want to have a baby with you," he had said simply, his hand finding hers under the sheets. "I know we have not been married long, but I have never been more certain of anything. I want to build a family with you, Willow." Her heart had soared at the words. She had wanted children for as long as she could remember, had imagined reading bedtime stories and teaching tiny hands to be gentle with sea creatures, sharing all the wonder of the natural world with someone new. The idea of doing that with Preston, of creating a life that was part him and part her, had felt like the most perfect thing imaginable. That had been 4 months ago. 4 months of hoping and trying and waiting and nothing. She knew it was not that long in the grand scheme of things, that plenty of couples took longer, but each negative test felt like a small failure, a crack in the perfect life they had built together. Willow splashed water on her face and took a deep breath before leaving the bathroom. Preston was in the kitchen making breakfast, something he insisted on doing every Saturday morning despite having a private chef on call. He looked up when she entered, his handsome face breaking into a smile that made her heart clench. "There you are," he said, flipping a pancake with surprising skill for someone who had probably never cooked a meal before meeting her. "I am making blueberry, your favorite." She crossed to him and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, pressing her face against the solid warmth of his back. He was still in his pajama pants, his dark hair messy from sleep, looking nothing like the powerful businessman who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions before lunch. "Another negative," she said quietly, feeling him tense slightly under her touch. Preston turned off the stove and turned in her arms, cupping her face in his large hands. His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones with infinite gentleness. "Hey, we are okay. It is going to happen. What if something is wrong?" The fear that had been building in her chest finally found words. "What if I cannot give you this? Stop." His voice was firm but kind. "First of all, you do not give me anything. We are in this together. Second, it has only been a few months. We are both healthy, young. There is no reason to think anything is wrong." "I am 31, she pointed out. "That is not that young for having babies." Preston pulled her closer, and she felt his lips press against her forehead. "You are perfect, and if it takes time, then it takes time. If we need help, we will get help. But Willow, please do not carry this weight alone. This is our journey, not just yours." She nodded against his chest, breathing in the familiar scent of him, letting his certainty steady her. This was what Preston did best, made her believe that everything would work out, that together they could handle anything. They ate breakfast on the balcony overlooking Central Park, talking about everything except babies and pregnancy tests. Preston told her about an acquisition deal he was closing next week, and she told him about the new exhibit they were planning at the aquarium featuring deep-sea creatures. It was comfortable and easy, the kind of conversation that came from really knowing someone, but Willow could feel the unspoken worry humming between them like a live wire. The following week, Willow threw herself into work with renewed focus. The aquarium was preparing for a major fundraising gala, and as one of the senior biologists, she was heavily involved in the planning. She spent long hours giving tours to potential donors, explaining their programs, sharing her passion for marine conservation with anyone who would listen. Preston attended the gala with her, looking devastating in a tuxedo and charming everyone he spoke with. She watched him write a check that made the development director nearly faint with joy, and felt a surge of pride and love so strong it almost hurt. He caught her eye across the room and winked, and she thought not for the first time how lucky she was. But that night, in their bathroom again, another negative test. And 3 days later, another. Willow started to dread the ritual, the hope followed inevitably by disappointment. She tried to hide it from Preston, putting on a brave face, but she could see the concern growing in his eyes. 2 months later, after 6 months of trying total, Willow sat in her doctor's office feeling like she was on the edge of something she did not want to face. Dr. Sarah Chen was a reproductive endocrinologist Preston had insisted she see, one of the best in the city. The office was warm and comfortable, designed to put anxious patients at ease, but Willow felt anything but relaxed. "Everything looks normal, doctor," Chen said, reviewing the test results spread across her desk. "Your hormone levels are good, your ovarian reserve is excellent, your cycles are regular. There is no obvious reason why you are not conceiving." "Then why is not it happening?" Willow asked, hating the desperation in her voice. "Sometimes it just takes time," Dr. Chen said gently. 6 months is not that long, truly. But I understand how frustrating it is. I would like to run some tests on your husband as well, just to get a complete picture. Would he be willing to come in?" Preston came to the appointment without hesitation, holding Willow's hand in the waiting room and making terrible jokes to make her laugh. His tests came back normal too. Everything was normal. They were both perfectly healthy, and yet, month after month, nothing happened. "Unexplained infertility," Dr. Chen finally said, giving it a name that somehow made it worse. "It accounts for about 30% of fertility issues. The good news is that many couples with unexplained infertility do eventually conceive naturally. The less good news is that it can be a longer process." She recommended they continue trying naturally for another few months, then consider fertility treatments if nothing happened. Willow left the office feeling defeated in a way she had not anticipated. At least if something was wrong, it could be fixed. This limbo of waiting and hoping felt unbearable. Preston was quieter than usual on the drive home, his jaw tight with tension. When they got back to the penthouse, he poured them both a glass of wine and led her to the couch. "I hate this," he said bluntly. "I hate watching you go through this every month. The hoping, the disappointment. I hate that I cannot fix it." "It is not your job to fix everything," Willow said softly. "You are my wife. Your happiness is absolutely my job." His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. "Maybe we should take a break from trying. Just enjoy each other for a while. Stop putting so much pressure on ourselves." "I do not want to stop," Willow admitted. "I want this baby, Preston. I want our baby." His eyes softened. "I do too. More than anything. But not at the cost of your well-being. I need you to promise me something. Promise me you will talk to me when it gets hard, that you will not carry this alone." "I promise," she whispered, and meant it. The next few months were a strange dance of trying to stay hopeful while bracing for disappointment. They made love with both passion and purpose. They ate healthy foods and took vitamins. They avoided alcohol during her fertile windows and did everything the books and websites recommended. And every month, Willow watched her period arrive like clockwork, each one feeling like a small death of possibility. She saw the strain on Preston too, though he tried to hide it. He worked longer hours, threw himself into his business with renewed intensity. She wondered if he was trying to control something when their fertility felt so out of control. They had always been so good at talking to each other, but now there was this thing between them, this failure that neither of them knew how to address. 10 months into trying, Willow had a breakdown. She was at the aquarium, giving a tour to a group of elementary school kids, when a little girl asked if she had any children of her own. It was an innocent question, one she had been asked dozens of times before, but something about it broke her open. She made it through the rest of the tour on autopilot, then locked herself in her office and sobbed. Her colleague Marcus knocked on the door 20 minutes later. "Willow, you okay in there?" She let him in, unable to hide her red eyes and tear-stained face. Marcus was 60, kind, and had known her since she started at the aquarium 5 years ago. "What is going on?" he asked, settling into the chair across from her desk. And somehow she found herself telling him everything. About trying for a baby, about the tests and the disappointments, about the fear that it would never happen and the guilt she felt for not being able to give Preston what he wanted. Marcus listened without interrupting, then leaned forward with a thoughtful expression. "My wife and I tried for 7 years to have our daughter. 7 years, Willow. I know how hard it is, how it takes over everything. But I also know that those years, as painful as they were, taught us things about ourselves and our marriage that we never would have learned otherwise. We had to choose each other every single day, even when it was hard, especially when it was hard. I do not know if I have 7 years in me," Willow said honestly. "You do not have to decide that now. You just have to decide today. Today, you choose to keep going, or you choose to take a break, or you choose to try something different. But whatever you choose, make sure you are doing it together with your husband. Do not let this struggle pull you apart. Let it make you stronger. His words stayed with her all day. That evening, when Preston came home from work, she was waiting for him with a plan. "I want to be more aggressive," she said before he had even set down his briefcase. "I want to try IUI. Dr. Chen said we could, and I think we should." Preston studied her carefully. "Are you sure?" "There is no rush, Willow, I am sure. I need to feel like we are doing something, not just waiting and hoping. Please." He crossed to her and pulled her into his arms. "Okay, if that is what you want, then that is what we will do. I am with you, whatever it takes." The intrauterine insemination process was clinical and strange. Nothing like the romantic way they had imagined creating a baby. Willow had to take medications to stimulate her ovaries, go in for multiple ultrasounds to monitor her follicles, then time everything precisely. Preston had to provide a sample at the clinic, which he joked about to lighten the mood, but she could see embarrassed him. The actual insemination was quick and painless. And then came the worst part, the 2-week wait before they could test. Willow had never been good at waiting, and this felt like torture. She analyzed every twinge and symptom, convinced herself she felt different, then crashed when she started her period 2 days before the official test date. "It is okay," Preston said, holding her while she cried. "We can try again." They did try again, and again. 3 rounds of IUI over 3 months and nothing. Each failure hit harder than the last. Willow felt like her body was betraying her, refusing to do the one thing it was supposedly designed to do. She withdrew into herself, going through the motions at work, but feeling disconnected from everything. Preston tried everything to pull her back. He planned romantic dinners, surprised her with weekend getaways, sent flowers to her office with notes that made her cry. But there was a distance between them now that had not been there before, a sadness that colored everything. One night, after the 3rd failed IUI, Preston came home to find Willow sitting in the dark in their bedroom, staring out at the city lights. "We need to talk," he said, sitting beside her on the bed. "I know." Her voice was small. "This is destroying you, Willow. It is destroying us. We cannot keep doing this." Fear shot through her. "Are you saying you want to give up, that you do not want children anymore?" "No. I am saying we need to change how we are doing this. We need to take care of each other first. We need to remember why we are doing this in the first place." He took her hands in his. "I fell in love with you because you are passionate and kind, and you light up every room you walk into. But lately, I feel like I am watching that light go out, and it is killing me. I do not know how to stop wanting this," she whispered. "I am not asking you to stop wanting it. I am asking you to want us more, to prioritize our marriage, our connection. Because, Willow, I love you more than I want children. If I have to choose between having a baby and having you, the real you, happy and whole, I choose you every single time." His words broke something open in her chest. She had been so focused on the goal that she had forgotten about everything else, about the man sitting in front of her who loved her unconditionally, about the marriage they had built together, about all the reasons she had fallen in love with him in the first place. "I am sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I have been so caught up in this that I forgot about us, about you." Preston pulled her into his lap, holding her like she was something precious. "We are going to figure this out, but we are going to do it together, really together. No more you carrying this alone. No more me trying to fix things from the outside. We are a team, remember?" She nodded against his shoulder, feeling lighter than she had in months. "What do you think we should do?" "I think we should talk to Dr. Chen about IVF. Go all in, give it our best shot. But I also think we need to take a break first. A real break. Let us go somewhere, just the two of us, and remember how to be Preston and Willow, not just two people trying to make a baby. They went to the Caribbean for 2 weeks, leaving behind pregnancy tests and ovulation kits and all the medical interventions. They snorkeled in crystal-clear water, made love on the beach at sunset, talked for hours about everything and nothing. Preston taught her to sail, and she taught him to identify different species of tropical fish. They laughed more than they had in months, and Willow felt the connection between them strengthen and deepen. On their last night, sitting on their private balcony watching the stars, Preston turned to her with a serious expression. "I want you to know something," he said. "If the IVF does not work, if we never have biological children, I am still the luckiest man in the world because I have you. We can adopt, we can foster, we can be the cool aunt and uncle who spoil other people's kids, but my life is complete with you in it. Everything else is just extra." Willow felt tears prick her eyes, but they were good tears, grateful tears. "How did I get so lucky to find you?" "I ask myself the same question every day." He kissed her softly. "Are you ready to try IVF? I am ready to try anything as long as we are doing it together." Back in New York, they met with Dr. Chen to discuss the IVF process. It was intensive and expensive, though money was not an issue for them. What mattered was the physical and emotional toll it would take. The medications were harsh, the egg retrieval was a surgical procedure, and the success rates were good but not guaranteed. "I will be honest with you, doctor," Chen said. "IVF is often called the last stop on the fertility journey, but for many couples it is also the most successful. Given your ages and health, I would estimate about a 60% chance of success per transfer." "What if it does not work?" Willow asked. "Then we try again." Most couples who do IVF go through multiple rounds. The question is how many rounds you are willing to do emotionally and physically. Preston squeezed Willow's hand. "Let us take it one step at a time. Do one round, see what happens, and then decide from there." The IVF process was grueling. Willow had to give herself shots every day, powerful hormones that made her emotional and bloated and exhausted. Preston learned to help with the injections, his hands steady and gentle, even though she could see how much it hurt him to cause her pain. They went to frequent monitoring appointments, watching on ultrasound as her ovaries produced follicles, each one a potential future baby. The egg retrieval was harder than Willow expected. She was sedated for the procedure, but woke up cramping and sore. Preston was there when she came out of anesthesia, holding her hand and looking worried. "How many?" she asked groggily. 15 eggs, he said, smiling. Dr. Chen said that is excellent. Over the next few days, they received updates from the embryology lab. Of the 15 eggs, 12 were mature enough to fertilize. Of those 12, 10 fertilized successfully. By day 5, they had 6 embryos that made it to the blastocyst stage, ready to be transferred or frozen. Dr. Chen recommended transferring 1 embryo and freezing the rest. "You are young and healthy, and single embryo transfer significantly reduces the risk of multiples while still maintaining good success rates." The embryo transfer was quick and painless, almost anticlimactic after everything they had been through. Willow lay on the exam table while Dr. Chen used a catheter to place the tiny embryo into her uterus, the whole thing guided by ultrasound. Preston stood beside her, holding her hand and staring at the monitor where they could see the flash of light that marked their potential future baby entering her body. Then came the wait. 10 days until they could do a blood test to see if it worked. 10 days that felt like 10 years. Willow tried to stay busy, throwing herself into work, but every moment was colored by hope and fear. Preston was her rock, distracting her with movies and games, making her laugh when she got too deep in her own head. The morning of the pregnancy test, they went to the clinic together. The phlebotomist drew Willow's blood and told them they would have results by the afternoon. They went home to wait, both too nervous to do anything productive. When Willow's phone rang at 2 in the afternoon, she almost dropped it. Preston came to stand beside her as she answered on speakerphone. "Willow, it is Dr. Chen. I have your results." "Okay," Willow's voice shook. "Your beta HCG is 65. You are pregnant." The world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. Willow looked at Preston, whose face had gone completely still, processing the words. "Are you sure?" Willow asked stupidly. Dr. Chen laughed warmly. "I am sure. Congratulations. We will need you to come in for another test in 2 days to make sure the levels are rising appropriately. But yes, you are definitely pregnant." They hung up and stood frozen in the middle of their living room, staring at each other. Then Preston let out a whoop of joy and swept Willow into his arms, spinning her around. "We did it," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Willow, we are going to have a baby." She was crying and laughing at the same time, holding on to him like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. "I cannot believe it. After everything, it actually worked." The second blood test 2 days later showed her levels rising perfectly. Then came the first ultrasound at 6 weeks, where they saw a tiny flicker on the screen that Dr. Chen said was the heartbeat. Preston squeezed Willow's hand so hard it hurt, but she did not care. That little flicker was their baby, alive and growing inside her. The first trimester was nerve-wracking. After everything they had been through, Willow was terrified of losing the pregnancy. She went to every appointment holding her breath, only relaxing when she saw the baby on the ultrasound, growing bigger each time. Preston was overprotective in the sweetest way, insisting she take it easy, bringing her ginger tea when the morning sickness hit, rubbing her feet every night. At 12 weeks, they told their families. Willow's parents cried with joy, and Preston's mother hugged them both for a solid 5 minutes. They had held back from telling anyone earlier, wanting to be sure, but now that they were out of the first trimester, the news felt real and safe to share. Work found out shortly after when Willow started showing, her normally flat stomach rounding with unmistakable pregnancy. Her colleagues were thrilled, throwing her a surprise celebration in the break room with a cake decorated with little fish. Marcus gave her a long hug and whispered, "See, all that struggle was worth it." And it was. Every kick from the baby, every ultrasound showing healthy growth, every moment of connection between her and Preston as they planned for their future felt like a gift. They transformed one of the spare bedrooms into a nursery, painting it a soft sage green and filling it with books about the ocean and plush sea creatures. Preston insisted on building the crib himself, even though he had probably never used a screwdriver before in his life. It ended up slightly crooked, but Willow loved it all the more for the effort he had put in. At 20 weeks, they found out they were having a girl. Preston cried when the ultrasound technician told them, actually cried, tears running down his face as he stared at the screen showing their daughter moving and stretching. "A girl," he kept saying. "We are having a daughter, Willow." She kissed him, tasting salt on his lips, feeling so full of love she thought she might burst. This man who commanded billion-dollar deals and led thousands of employees was reduced to tears by the thought of their baby girl, and it was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. The pregnancy was not always easy. Willow had terrible heartburn in the 3rd trimester, and her feet swelled so much she could only wear flip-flops. She was exhausted all the time, and the sciatic nerve pain made it hard to walk sometimes. But Preston was there through all of it, rubbing her back at 3 in the morning when she could not sleep, helping her tie her shoes when she could not reach, telling her she was beautiful even when she felt like a whale. One evening in her 8th month, they were lying in bed together, Preston's hand on her enormous belly feeling the baby kick, when Willow said something she had been thinking about for weeks. "I am glad it was hard." Preston looked at her in surprise. "What do you mean?" "The fertility struggle." "I am glad we went through it. I mean, obviously I wish it had been easier and I would not want to do it again. But Preston, it made us stronger. It tested us in ways I never expected and we came through it together. I know now that we can handle anything life throws at us because we already survived the hardest thing." Preston was quiet for a long moment, his hand still resting on her belly. "You know what I learned," he finally said. "I learned that love is not about the easy moments. Anyone can be in love when everything is perfect. Real love is choosing each other when things are hard, when you are tired and frustrated and scared. It is showing up every single day even when you do not have anything left to give. That is what we did. We showed up for each other." Willow felt tears slip down her cheeks. "I love you so much, more than I even knew was possible." "I love you too, you and this little girl who cannot stop kicking." He leaned down and pressed a kiss to Willow's stomach. "Settle down in there, kiddo. Your mom needs to sleep." Their daughter, Penelope Rose McKinley, was born on a rainy Tuesday in October, after 16 hours of labor that Preston never left her side through. He held Willow's hand, wiped her face with cool cloths, breathed through contractions with her, and told her how strong she was until his voice was hoarse. When Penelope finally arrived, red-faced and screaming, the nurse placed her on Willow's chest, and time seemed to stop. She was perfect, absolutely perfect, with a shock of dark hair and tiny fists waving in the air. Preston was crying again, laughing and crying at the same time as he looked at his wife and daughter. "You did it," he whispered, kissing Willow's sweaty forehead. "She is here. Our baby is here." Willow could not take her eyes off Penelope, studying every feature, marveling at the weight of her, the warmth, the reality. After everything they had been through, all the tears and disappointments and fears, this little person existed. She was real and alive and theirs. The first few weeks were a blur of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes and feeding challenges. Willow's body was healing from birth. Her hormones were all over the place, and she cried at random commercials and the way Preston looked at their daughter. But through it all, they worked as a team. Preston learned to change diapers and swaddle and soothe a crying baby with the same intensity he brought to everything else in his life. He took paternity leave from his company, something he had never done before, and spent 6 weeks doing nothing but caring for Willow and Penelope. "I am never going to get these days back," he said, when Willow told him he did not have to stay home so long. "She is only going to be this little once. Work can wait." And watching him with their daughter, seeing him transform into a father right before her eyes, Willow fell in love with him all over again. He was gentle and patient, singing ridiculous songs at 3 in the morning to get Penelope back to sleep, reading her bored books even though she was too young to understand, carrying her against his chest in the baby carrier for hours because she would not settle any other way. On their first wedding anniversary, when Penelope was 2 months old, Preston ordered dinner from Willow's favorite restaurant and set up a romantic table on their balcony. They took turns eating and holding the baby, laughing at how different this anniversary was from what they might have imagined a year ago. "You remember last year?" Preston asked, pouring them each a glass of champagne. "We were just starting to try for a baby. I had no idea what was ahead of us." "Would you have done anything differently if you had known?" Willow asked. Preston looked at Penelope, asleep in his arms, then at Willow. "No, not a single thing. Every struggle, every disappointment, every hard moment led us here, and here is exactly where I want to be." Willow raised her glass. "To the struggle that made us stronger." "To the struggle," Preston echoed, touching his glass to hers, "and to forever with you." When Penelope was 6 months old, Willow went back to work part-time at the aquarium. Preston had offered to support her if she wanted to stay home permanently, but she loved her work and wanted to keep that part of her identity. They hired a wonderful nanny, and Willow arranged her schedule so she could still nurse and spend most of her time with the baby. Preston scaled back his hours too, determined not to be an absent father. He left work at 5 whenever possible, brought Penelope to the office on casual Fridays, and turned down travel that would keep him away for more than a couple of days. His employees were shocked at first, but gradually they adjusted to this new version of their CEO, one who prioritized family as much as business. On Penelope's first birthday, they threw a party at the aquarium, surrounded by friends and family and fish tanks. Penelope smashed a whale-shaped cake into her face while everyone laughed and took pictures. Preston pulled Willow aside at one point, leading her to a quiet corner. "I have been thinking," he said, "about maybe trying for another baby. I know it was hard the first time, and if you do not want to go through it again, I completely understand. But we still have those frozen embryos, and Penelope is so amazing that I cannot help but want more." Willow smiled, having wondered when he would bring this up. "I have been thinking about it too. I am not ready yet. I want to enjoy Penelope being little for a while longer, but maybe when she is 2, we could try then." "No pressure," Preston said firmly. "Whenever you are ready, or never, I am good either way. 1 kid, 5 kids, or just Penelope, I have everything I need right here." "I want her to have a sibling," Willow said. "And I want to do it while we still have those embryos, her biological siblings, waiting in that freezer. But Preston, if it does not work next time, I do not want to do IVF again. I cannot go through that again." "That is fair. We will try once, and whatever happens, happens. Deal, deal." 2 years later, when Penelope was a chatty toddler obsessed with dolphins, they transferred another embryo. This time, the 2-week wait felt different. They had Penelope to distract them, a busy life that did not allow for obsessing over every symptom. When the pregnancy test came back positive, they celebrated, but with a calmness that came from already knowing the miracle of parenthood. The pregnancy was easier too. Maybe because Willow knew what to expect, or maybe because she was not carrying the weight of so much fear and expectation. They told Penelope she was going to be a big sister, and she took to the idea immediately, kissing Willow's belly and bringing her toys to share with the baby. Their son, Peter James McKinley, was born on a sunny day in May, quick and healthy and perfect. Penelope met him when she was 2.5, climbing carefully onto the hospital bed to peer at her little brother with fascination. "Baby," she announced solemnly, patting his head with gentle hands. Preston gathered all 3 of them close, his family, the people who had made his life complete in ways he never imagined. Willow looked at him over their children's heads and saw her own joy reflected in his eyes. They still had 3 embryos frozen, potential children waiting for the chance to exist. They talked about it sometimes, whether to try for more or donate them to another couple struggling with infertility. Eventually, they decided to try one more time when Peter was 2, and Willow got pregnant with twin girls. 4 children had never been the plan, but they embraced the chaos and exhaustion and overwhelming love that came with their loud, messy, beautiful family. Years later, when Penelope was 10 and asking questions about where babies came from, Willow told her the truth about their fertility journey. How she and Preston had wanted her so much, how hard they had fought to bring her into the world, how that struggle had taught them about love and perseverance, and never giving up on the things that mattered most. "So I am a science baby?" Penelope asked, fascinated. "You are a loved baby," Preston corrected, pulling her onto his lap. "You are a baby who was wanted so much that we moved mountains to have you, and every bit of that struggle was worth it because we got you." Penelope hugged him tight, and Willow watched them with a full heart. Their journey had not been easy, but easy had never been the point. The point was showing up for each other, choosing love even when it was hard, building something strong enough to weather any storm. Preston caught her eye and held out his free arm, inviting her into the embrace. She settled against his side, Penelope between them, and felt the solid truth of their life together. They had started as two people falling in love, become two people struggling for a dream, and emerged as a family forged in fire and hope and unwavering commitment. The struggle had made them stronger, and that strength had built a love that would last forever.